Okay, today we're going to add and subtract rational functions. So in order to do this, we need to find common denominators. So if you look at an expression like this, I have one fraction plus another fraction. So just like when you're adding any fractions, you need to find a common denominator. So if you're going to look at 3xy and 6x squared, the one way to find a common denominator is to write down the first expression, so write down 3xy, and then take a look at the second expression and say, well, what does the second expression have that the first one does not? Well, the second one has a 6, so I need to at least have a 6 in here. This one has 2 x's, so I need to have at least 2 x's, and then of course I already have the y, which means my common denominator would be 6x squared y. The next thing you need to do is you need to look at your first fraction and you need to say, well, what do I have to multiply it by in order for the denominator to be 6x squared y? Well, you'll have to multiply by 2x. You'll have to do the same for the second fraction. You'll have to take a look and say, well, what do I have to multiply it by in order for it to have a common denominator of 6x squared y? And you'll have to multiply it by y. So in the numerator, you'll have 10x plus 7y. All right, take a look at this here. What would the common denominator be on this one? All right, 4xy. What do you have to add? What do you have to multiply the first one by in order to have that common denominator? A 2. And what you have to multiply the second fraction by? An x. So now in the numerator you have 2 parentheses x plus 3 minus x parentheses x minus 2. You need to distribute and then combine all your like terms in the numerator in order to have your answer. All right, on this one here, once again, now I need a common denominator, but in order to see what my common denominator is, I need to factor each of these. So if I factor this one, I would get 2 parentheses x minus 2, and if I factored the second one, I would have 2 parentheses x plus 5. Now it's much easier for me to see what my common denominator would be, which would be 2 times x minus 2, x plus 5. From here, it's the same as what we did previously. You have to look at the first fraction and realize that you must multiply it by x plus 5, and you have to look at the second fraction and realize you have to multiply it by x minus 2. From here, you're going to distribute, combine like terms, and there is your answer. All right, you try this one. Go ahead and put this on pause and work through this and see if you can come up with the right answer. All right, did you get this as your answer? You're going to factor this one. You're going to factor out a 2 from the second one. You're going to have your common denominator be 2 times x plus 3, x minus 3. Multiply the first fraction by 2. Multiply the second fraction by x minus 3, and simplify. All right, go ahead and try this one. Did you get this as your answer? All right, factor the first denominator, factor the second denominator, find your common denominator, multiply the first one by 3x plus 1, and multiply the second one by x plus 4. Distribute and combine all your like terms. All right, let's take a look at this one here. All right, once again, the first thing you're going to do is factor the denominator. But when you take a look at this second one, it looks very similar to x minus 1, only backwards. So when you have something like this, factor out a negative sign. And now you can see, once I've factored out that negative sign, they do both share this x minus 1. But be careful here, because I have a negative x minus 1. So before I get confused on this, I'm just going to change that to a positive. All right, so now I find my common denominator, realize that I have, the first one has all of the factors. I don't have to multiply it by anything. But the second one needs a 4x plus 1. And I'm going to distribute and combine all my like terms.